Recently, I made a video explaining how AAA games fake destruction, using Battlefield 6 as an example. And that system is brilliant because it's predictable, optimized, multiplayer friendly. You can watch the video by clicking on the link on the screen now. But then the finals came out, and it completely changed the rules. And somehow it still works in multiplayer. Today, we're going to break down the destruction system in the finals and compare it to the classic Battlefield approach. Because what Embark Studios built here isn't just impressive, it's a completely different philosophy of destruction. First, let's quickly recap how destruction works in most AAA shooters. Games like Battlefield 6 don't simulate buildings using physics. Instead, destruction is pre-designed by artists and engineers. Walls are split into predefined chunks. Each chunk has a damage state and a break animation. When damage reaches a threshold, the game simply swaps the intact asset for a destroyed version. VFX is used at a strategic moment to help sell the illusion. This approach is extremely powerful because it's predictable, optimizable, multiplayer friendly, and most importantly, it's art directable. Designers know exactly how cover will change, artists control the look, engineers keep performance stable. That's why this system has dominated AAA shooters for over a decade. But the finals takes a completely different approach. The finals was created by Embark Studios, and what's interesting is that the studio was founded by former DICE developers, many of which worked on the tools of their engine Frostbite. That's the same studio behind Battlefield. So this isn't a random indie experiment. It's the people who helped define Battlefield destruction, pushing the idea even further. The biggest difference between Battlefield and the finals is this. Battlefield simulates events. The final simulates how buildings actually hold together and fall apart. In Battlefield, the destruction event is predefined. Wall explodes, debris animation plays. But in the finals, the game is actually tracking structural stability. Walls support floors. Floors support ceilings. Remove enough support and the entire structure collapses. This means destruction becomes emergent gameplay. Instead of triggering destruction, players create it. Now here's why this is technically insane. Multiplayer games need every player to see the exact same world state. If a building collapses on your screen, it must collapse the exact same way for every other player. Otherwise, you get desync, invisible walls, players falling through floors. This is why most AAA shooters avoid full physics destruction. It's incredibly difficult to keep stability across the network. The finals solves this using server-side physics simulation. Instead of each client simulating destruction, the server calculates the collapse and sends the result to every player. Let's add this information also. Battlefield 6 sold over 20 million copies so far, and the main game mode is 32 versus 32. So that's a lot of players at the same time on the map. Whereas for the finals, it's harder to say how many players installed and played the game, as it is a free-to-play game. But we can take a look at the most recent data on SteamDB, and we have to say that it's 3 teams of 3 against each other. So you have 64 players for Battlefield and 9 players for the finals. I'm not sure this destruction system would have been possible in Battlefield 6. Now this is where things get really interesting, especially for environment artists. Because the difference between these two systems isn't just technical. It fundamentally changes how environments are built. In traditional AAA destruction systems, like those used in Battlefield, artists design specific breakpoints in advance. Walls are divided into chunks, floors have predefined fracture zones, and when destruction happens, the game triggers one of those pre-authored states. So the destruction is carefully planned. Artists know exactly how a wall will fail. They know where debris will appear, and they know what the final destroyed state will look like. This approach gives developers complete artistic control. But the final approaches the problem from a completely different direction. Instead of authoring destruction states, the game simulates structural behavior. This means environment artists aren't just building geometry anymore. They're building structures. Walls need structural strength. Floors need support relationships. Columns need to carry weight. And when those supports disappear, the building collapses. So instead of designing destruction animations, artists are designing physical behavior. They're defining how materials fail, how structures distribute weight, and how buildings respond when parts of them disappear. In many ways, this turns environment art into something closer to structural engineering, because every wall, beam, and floor has to behave like part of a real building, and that fundamentally changes the role of environment artists. In Battlefield, artists design destruction moments. In the finals, artists design destruction systems. And that shift from authored destruction to simulated structure is what makes the technology behind the finals so fascinating. If you're learning from these videos but struggling to put everything together into a full environment, that's exactly why I built my full course. You'll build the entire scene step by step in real time, understanding composition, scale, materials, and lighting, so you can apply the same process to your own worlds. These environments were created by students using the same workflow you'll learn here. It's designed for artists who already know the basics and want to create portfolio-level work, not just isolated studies. This isn't about learning tools, it's about learning how professionals build environments. If that's where you're trying to get to, you can check it out in the description. So if this technology exists, why don't all AAA games use it? Because it comes with trade-offs. Battlefield's destruction system gives developers complete control. Designers know exactly how the map will evolve, but simulation systems introduce uncertainty. A building might collapse in ways designers didn't expect, which can break gameplay balance. That's why most competitive shooters prioritize predictability. The reason destruction works so well in the finals is because the entire game is designed around it. This isn't a feature that was added late in development. It's a foundation of the entire design. In many shooters, destruction is mostly visual spectacle. It looks impressive, but it rarely changes how players approach the match. In Battlefield games, for example, destruction usually supports the battle, but it rarely defines it. You might remove a wall for cover or collapse a small building, but the core objectives of the match stay the same. The finals takes a completely different approach. Here, destruction is the strategy. Objectives move, cash outs relocate, teams constantly reposition across the arena. And because every surface can be destroyed, players are constantly reshaping the map itself. Instead of navigating a fixed level, players are effectively editing the level in real time. You're not just using the environment, you're weaponizing it. A team hiding inside a building? Bring the building down. The cover disappears. The floor collapses. and the entire fight changes instantly. So the map isn't just a backdrop, it's not just scenery. In the finals, the map is a weapon. And that's why the destruction system feels so powerful, because it's not just technology, it's game design. What the finals shows us is something important about AAA game development. Technology doesn't matter unless the game is designed around it. Battlefield perfected controlled destruction. The finals pushes systemic destruction. And understanding these design decisions is exactly the kind of thinking that separates amateurs from developers. And if you want to work in the AAA industry one day, learning to see games this way is a massive advantage. If you want more breakdowns of how AAA games actually work behind the scenes, subscribe. Because the more you understand these systems, the better you become as an artist, as a designer, or as a developer. Speaking of which, I'm giving away a portfolio checklist that gives many tips and directions on what to include on your portfolio, what not to forget, and basically what matters to hiring teams. So it's completely free. Check it out. The link is in the description. Shout out to the members of the channel, and you are all welcome to join. Additional perks will be added very soon.